Every year at their Worldwide Developer Conference, WWDC, Apple gives us a sneak peek of what they're going to be doing with their software platforms over the next year. And there are a lot of really cool features coming to the Home app and all of Apple's platforms for controlling your smart home. So let's get into the details. I'm Eric Welander. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk all about Apple and smart home tech. So if you're into those things, consider subscribing. Now, the feature I'm most excited about from today is the robot vacuum cleaner support that Apple said is coming later this year to the Home app. Presumably, this is with support for the Matter 1.2 standard. And it's not just controlling the power of a robot vacuum. You'll also be able to control the cleaning mode, vacuuming, mopping, as well as see the charge status. And this can all participate in automations and scenes, as well as responding to Siri requests. And there's a lot more stuff with Siri we'll get to in a minute. Apple also announced big updates to guest sharing, which is really a look into the future of where the smart home, particularly smart locks, are headed. Now, currently with Apple HomeKey, you can name guests who just get a name and then a PIN code to access any or all of your HomeKey locks in your Apple smart home. And those are locks from third-party manufacturers that support Apple's HomeKey standard, where then you can just tap your Apple Watch or your iPhone to the door to unlock. And now you can share that same functionality later this year with guests. And this is available if you have a HomePod or Apple TV as your main home hub. So basically the new home architecture as of like a couple of years ago. But Apple adds an interesting detail in the footnotes, which is that setting a schedule for guest access via hands-free unlock with home keys and tap to unlock with home keys or PIN codes requires a Matter lock that supports schedules. So the Aqara U50, which I recently reviewed on my channel, is the closest thing to a lock that supports HomeKey as well as Matter right now. And it's still an open question to me whether supporting Matter via a bridge like Aqara does with their U50 would work or not with this, or if it needs to be Matter support built into the lock itself. But definitely exciting updates there, but stay tuned. I think later this summer, more of those hardware details will start to come out and sort themselves out. But those are just features for the guests of your home. What about you? Well, Apple also announced hands-free unlock, which will allow you to unlock your front door if you're simply near the door with an ultra-wideband enabled phone or Apple Watch and an ultra-wideband enabled lock. Now, there aren't any ultra-wideband enabled locks that I'm familiar with that work with Apple Home right now. The technology behind Apple HomeKey is NFC, or near field communications. So there's a new standard for locks from the CSA, which is the organization behind Matter, and it's called Aliro. And it looks like maybe some of this is tied to Aliro standard locks that will be coming in 2025. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the smart lock market in 2024, and it looks like it's only going to continue into 2025. So they're great locks to buy today. There will always be better locks to buy in the future. I wouldn't let this interrupt your purchasing schedule too much. When you need a lock, you need a lock. But it is good to keep in mind what new technology is coming down the road and if it's something you really want to wait for or not. Now, speaking of stuff that you don't have to wait nearly as long for, coming this fall with iOS and available today in the developer betas, are updates to Control Center. And that's that area of buttons and controls you get by swiping down from the upper right-hand corner of your iPhone or iPad screen. And this comes with new customizable controls. These can also be from third-party apps now, not just apps from Apple. And you can have all kinds of different size little widgets, basically, but they're meant to be interactive and controls more than they are widgets. And the Apple Home app has a variety of these widgets you can add with larger tiles as well as just small single action buttons. And these can control a smart selection of accessories, scenes, or both accessories or scenes, or you can fully customize it to just be specific scenes or accessories you're interested in. And you also get a lot of control over the layout of Control Center. Now, there's also multiple pages to Control Center. So there's the top one, which looks more or less what iOS 17 looks like, but then you can swipe up and get to multiple other pages. Now, the third page of this Control Center is dedicated to your smart home. So you'll be able to get a bunch of smart configured controls for your Apple Home right out of the box there. And you can also completely customize these screens to be what you want. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see third parties, including apps like Home Assistant, add support for their own custom controls here as well. So it's great to see, in this case, Apple opening it up to third parties. Another cool detail of this is that you can also run a shortcut with the shortcut control. Now, the Home app itself didn't really get a lot of updates. Of course, Apple announced a lot of new features coming later this year, but one new UI pattern they unveiled with iPadOS is this floating tab bar, which then can turn into a standard sidebar that you're familiar with the Home app and other apps on iPadOS 17, but with iPadOS 18, that now becomes a floating tab bar at the top. Now, Apple talked about how these kinds of controls can be customized by the user, but it looks like the Home app, at least as of yet, has not implemented that customizability. So it's just the main tabs up there at the top floating. I'd love to see the option to customize it, give you quick access to particular rooms that are important to you. For example, I use my iPad a lot in my office when I'm at home, so I'd love to be able to put my office room right up in the tabs on the Apple Home app on my iPad. Now, tvOS has a bunch of exciting announcements which were detailed in Apple's keynote, including the enhanced dialogue feature, which we first saw with stereo full-size HomePods paired to Apple TV last year. Now it's coming to basically all forms of audio you might attach to your Apple TV. And they also unveiled a new screensaver experience. So I love Apple's aerial screensavers that you can see on Apple TV and swipe through different ones. But now when you swipe up on the remote, you'll be brought into a new experience where you can see photos and have that mixed in with a clock. I think it's a great idea. I've tried setting this up on my Apple TV, and we'll get into that experience in just a minute. But without Apple making an actual smart display, I think this is another way to sort of get some of those features with having a nice big clock and versions of your photos right there on a big screen in, let's say, your living room. Now, visionOS has the iPad Home app still in compatibility mode, at least with Beta 1. So that gets the same floating tab bar design updates, but really no other major changes to visionOS in regards to Apple Home. There's no new control center like there is on iPhone and iPad, but there is a new gesture to quickly get to your home and control center views. There's also a new Bora Bora environment, which looks really cool, except for that the water looks really fake. Now, if you are into Vision Pro like I am, I cannot recommend enough checking out spatial photos. They are really something amazing. The Apple's added some new machine learning, which looks at any photograph, including ones that don't have, let's say, a depth map from an iPhone. It's just a standard photo, and it will make them appear 3D and lifelike. And then you can enter an immersive mode with that photo where it blows it up really big, and it is an experience that's hard to describe, but I highly recommend. Now, even if you're not even thinking twice about getting a Vision Pro anytime soon for any number of reasons, I still think it's a good reminder to be sure and take photographs and video of memories and people around you, because who knows what kind of technology we're going to have to experience that in 5 years or 10 years from now. And you're going to be so thankful to have those photos to go through then. Now, the big headline feature introduced at the end of Apple's keynote video was Apple Intelligence. And they're really trying to spin AI as something that they integrate in useful ways into your software. And there's all kinds of ways they're doing that. But it does look like via App Intents, you'll be able to set up various kinds of automations or use your iPhone and talk to Siri to get it to take care of some smart tasks that tie into your smart home as well as other apps on your phone. But that's not coming until the end of this year or early next year, it sounds like. So we're going to have to wait a little bit for that, but it is good to see that Apple is making a big investment to Siri, and they say that this is a big update to Siri, which I hope also improves our experience using Siri on HomePods and other Apple devices beyond our phones, Macs, and iPads. Now, if you are interested in installing the betas, I just want to offer a strong word of caution, especially with these early developer betas. These are intended for developers and people who have a reason to install them and know what they're doing. There are still very hard edges in the software. For example, in order to check out the Apple TV experience earlier this evening, I installed the beta on one of my home's Apple TVs. And you might think, oh, what's the big deal about putting a beta on some device that you just use to watch movies? But don't forget that your Apple TV is one of the key hubs in controlling your Apple smart home. And even though this is not my only Apple TV in my home, it still completely messed up my Apple home, and I had to restart and reboot all kinds of devices. At one point earlier this evening, I had 49 accessories unresponsive in the Home app. Now, I did this intentionally. I'm trying to check out these betas and let you guys know about the new features. I also had trouble on the Apple TV beta getting the whole new screensaver thing to work with photos just yet. I'm sure all of that are just issues that Apple will sort out over time, and maybe just things I need to give my Apple TV more time to go through my photo library. But either way, hold off if you don't have a reason to install these betas on a device of yours. Just keep that in mind, as this is all future tech that we're getting early looks at, and that means that it's not quite finished. And I'm sure there are little details about how this all works that will evolve and change as the summer goes on. And of course, be sure to stay tuned to my channel as we talk all about that and lots of other products and other details all about Apple and smart home tech. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in your next video.